everyone, and welcome. We're doing a deep dive today into this AI thing for building SaaS apps everyone's been talking about.
Lovable.
Lovable, right? We're basing this on the Build Lovable SaaS article someone sent in from World Insider 2024.
Right?
And some of the stuff in there is pretty wild. Like, they're saying you can build an app in, like, a few months.
Yeah.
Which is crazy when it used to take, like, a year or more.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to look into all that. Like, how is that even possible?
Right.
Plus, they're saying you can save money, get a better product, and scale it like crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
So whether you're like a coding expert or just starting out, stick with us. This deep dive could change how you think about making software.
What's really interesting about Lovable is it's not just like another new tool.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about building these SaaS apps.
Okay.
They're using AI for everything.
Okay, so break it down for me. What exactly is Lovable, and like why is everyone so excited about it?
So imagine like you describe what you want your app to do.
Yeah.
And then AI helps you build it.
Wow.
That's what Lovable is. It can write the code for you
Really?
based on like your instructions using AI code generation.
Huh.
It can even like design your database and hook up with other services automatically.
So you're saying like developers don't have to spend months coding everything by hand anymore?
It's a big shift.
Yeah.
Think about it. Traditional SaaS development took like 6 to 12 months, sometimes even longer.
Yeah.
Then we saw those low-code platforms pop up. What was that, like 2018?
Yeah, around the...
And that got it down to maybe 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
But now, with AI platforms like Lovable, we're talking 1 to 3 months for a working app.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Huge.
But I gotta be honest, I'm a little skeptical.
Sure.
If we're building things that fast, are we sacrificing quality?
Right.
Like, how does Lovable make sure you're not just putting out buggy software?
Well, actually, McKinsey did a study on this.
Yeah.
They found that companies using tools like Lovable actually had 40% lower cost and ended up with 30% fewer bugs.
So it's saying it's not just faster, it's potentially better.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you got my attention. But let's say I want to try Lovable out.
Uh-huh.
Where do I even start?
Well, first, you'll need to set up your development environment.
Okay, is that hard to do?
Not really. The good news is Lovable runs on pretty much any operating system, so Windows, Mac OS, Linux, whatever you've got.
Okay.
And you don't need a crazy powerful computer either. 8 gigs of RAM is the minimum, but 16 is recommended. For storage, you'll need 256 gigs.
All right.
Obviously, good internet is a must for all those cloud features.
That makes sense. So once I'm set up, what's the interface like?
Oh, it's very user-friendly.
Okay, good.
They really focused on the user experience.
Yeah.
You don't need a computer science degree to figure it out.
So what about when you're actually building an app? Like, what's that process like?
Well, first, you got to have a plan. Like, you wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, right?
All right.
Lovable has some project templates to help get you started. From there, you'll want to configure, like, basic settings, like how will users log in, what will your database look like,
Okay.
and how your app will connect to other services, things like that.
That planning part seems pretty important, but it also sounds a little overwhelming,
Yeah.
especially if you're new to all this sauce stuff. Can Lovable, like, help with that planning phase, or is it more for the actual building?
No, Lovable can definitely help with planning.
Okay, good.
A 2024 report by Product Plan said almost 80% of failed SaaS projects failed because the requirements weren't clear at the start.
Wow.
But here's where Lovable's AI can really help. It can help you write those user stories
Okay.
and build out feature maps, which are key for what they call agile development.
Okay.
That's a method that helps you get things done quickly and adapt to changes along the way.
I see. So Lovable's not just about writing code, it's also about helping you think through the whole project from the get-go.
Yep.
That makes sense. But I'm also thinking staying organized is super important, especially if you want to scale the app later on.
You're absolutely right. There's a great quote by Mike Johnson. He's the lead architect at SaaS Weekly, and he says, "The key to success with Lovable is keeping your project organized from the start.
Okay.
It saves tons of time down the road when you're trying to scale and maintain everything."
Yeah.
And Lovable really encourages this approach.
Uh-huh.
You'll have your code neatly arranged, separate folders for tests, documentation, all that. It's like having a perfectly organized toolbox where everything has its place.
So it's all about setting yourself up for success from day one.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. We've been talking about like the technical side of getting started with Lovable, but what about the strategy? Like, how do you make sure you're building an app people will actually want to use?
Right. You need a solid strategic framework before you start building anything. It's like your North Star. And the first step is defining those product requirements super clearly.
Okay, so what should those product requirements include?
Think of it like a three-legged stool. You've got your business objectives,
Hmm.
your revenue targets, your positioning in the market, what makes your app unique.
Got it.
Then you've got your technical specs, how it'll perform, how scalable does it need to be, how secure,
Huh.
to protect your users' data,
Right.
and of course, user requirements. What features are essential, what kind of interface will people love. If any of these legs are missing, your SaaS school won't stand a chance.
That's a really helpful analogy. But we've talked about planning, and I'm curious, like, how does Lovable's AI actually help with that? Is it just about brainstorming, or can it actually do
It
stuff?
goes way beyond just brainstorming. Remember we talked about agile development?
Yeah.
Well, Lovable's AI can help create those detailed user stories,
Okay.
those descriptions of how someone uses your app to do a specific thing. And it can help build feature maps,
Okay.
those visual representations of all the features you want to include.
That's cool. I can see how that would be really valuable, especially if you're new to Agile. So let's say we've got our plan, we mapped out our features, and we're ready to build. What's the first thing we should tackle?
Let's start with a foundation of any secure app, user authentication, and authorization.
Okay.
This is where Lovable really shines.
Yeah.
It makes it so easy to set up robust security, things like multi-factor authentication.
Okay. So that's where users need more than just a password to log in.
Exactly. Lovable also has built-in options for social media logins, different access levels for different users, a whole bunch of stuff.
Security is a big deal these days, especially with all the data breaches we hear about. So it sounds like Lovable is trying to make it easier to build a secure app from the ground up.
Exactly. It's like having a security expert looking over your shoulder, pointing out potential issues, and suggesting best practices.
Okay. That makes me feel better. But let's talk about the less glamorous side of things, the stuff behind the scenes that users don't see. What about databases and APIs? Those can be pretty intimidating if you're not a coder.
Lovable actually tackles those head-on and makes them way less intimidating.
Okay, good.
For the database, it can help you design what they call the schema, which is basically the blueprint.
Okay.
It decides how all your data is going to be organized and stored.
Uh-huh.
And for APIs, which let your app talk to other services, Lovable can help with that too.
So it sounds like Lovable is trying to take the fear factor out of those complex tasks, which is good news if you're not super technical.
Definitely.
But I'm curious, how much time are we realistically talking about saving here?
So Lovable's AI can actually optimize database design, cutting down that schema design time by like 65%.
Wow.
And then with APIs, it has features like RESTful API generation and GraphQL support, so you don't have to write as much code.
Okay.
Michael Zhang, the VP of Engineering at Stripe, he said, the real power of Lovable is that it handles those complex things in the background while keeping it simple for you to implement.
Interesting. It sounds like Lovable really is changing how we build software. But before we move on, I want to make sure everyone's clear on what Lovable is and why it's such a big deal. Can you give us a quick recap of the key benefits?
Sure. So Lovable is basically revolutionizing SaaS development by using AI at every stage. We're talking faster development, saving money, better quality software with fewer bugs,
Yeah.
and it makes scaling your app easier as it grows.
Okay.
But maybe most importantly, Lovable's making all of this accessible to more people. Even if you're not a tech expert, you can build your own software now.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's it for part 1 of our Lovable deep dive. We talked about what it is, why people are excited about it, and how it can help you build awesome SaaS applications, whether you're a coding pro or just starting out. But stick around for part 2. We'll be diving into some specific Lovable features and techniques that can really take your app to the next level. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Lovable.
Yeah.
In part 1, we talked about how Lovable is like changing the whole SaaS game.
Right.
Now let's get into some of the specifics, the features and techniques that make Lovable so powerful.
It's time to go deeper and see how you can really streamline your development.
All right, I'm ready. Where do we start?
Let's tackle database design.
Okay.
It used to be such a tedious process,
Oh, yeah.
designing the schema and everything.
Right.
But Lovable's AI-powered database management system changes all that.
We did touch on this a bit in part 1, but I'm curious to learn more. Like, how does Lovable actually make it easier?
So imagine you tell Lovable what kind of data you need to store.
Okay.
Customer info, product details, order history, all that.
Mm-hmm.
And the AI suggests a schema for you.
Wow.
It's like having an expert architect right there with you.
Okay, so it's like an AI assistant for database design.
Right.
But does that mean we can just skip planning and let the AI do everything?
Well, Lovable's AI can do a lot of the work,
Yeah.
but you still need to understand your data needs. Like, what are you collecting?
Okay.
How are you going to organize it?
Right.
How will you use it? Then Lovable can suggest the best structure.
So it's more like a collaboration, human and AI working together.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But what are the actual benefits of using Lovable for this? Why not just do it the old way?
Well, one big benefit is saving time. Research from MongoDB shows that using AI for this can cut down design time by 65%.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. That's time you can spend on other important stuff like building features or focusing on user experience.
Time is money, right? Especially in software development, so that's a big plus. Any other benefits besides just speed?
Yeah, improved performance.
Yeah.
Lovable's AI suggests optimizations to make your database queries run faster.
Okay.
That means a smoother experience for your users, especially when you have lots of data.
Right. That's crucial for any app that handles a lot of data, especially as it grows. Are there any other database tasks that Lovable can help with?
Oh yeah, data migration.
Okay.
Moving from an older system to a new one.
Right.
Or maybe you need to combine data from multiple places.
Uh-huh.
Lovable can automate a lot of that for you. Makes it much smoother and faster.
That's a huge relief. Data migration can be such a pain, so having tools to simplify that is awesome. All right, let's switch gears a bit and talk about API integration. We touched on that in part 1.
Right.
How does Lovable streamline that?
API integration is essential for modern SaaS apps.
Yeah.
It's how your app talks to all those other services.
Okay.
Think of it like building bridges between your app and other apps.
Okay.
Lovable makes building those bridges much easier.
Remind me why this API stuff is so important.
Okay, think about all the different things a SaaS app needs to do, like user logins, payments, email, analytics.
Right.
Most apps don't build all of that themselves. They use specialized services.
Okay.
And those services connect through APIs. It's all about using the best tools for the job.
So APIs are like the messengers that let different apps talk to each other and share info?
Exactly.
But how does Lovable actually make it easier to connect with those APIs?
Well, one way is through RESTful API generation.
Okay.
REST is like a common language for APIs. With Lovable, you just define your API endpoints.
Okay.
Those are like entry points to your app.
Right.
And Lovable generates the code for you.
So it's doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work, which lets me focus on the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Are there any other API features that Lovable has?
Yeah, it also supports GraphQL,
Okay.
which is another way for apps to communicate. It's really efficient.
Okay.
And Lovable makes it easy to manage those GraphQL APIs.
Sounds like Lovable has API integration covered pretty well, but
Yeah.
even with all these tools, documentation is still important, right?
Oh, absolutely. Good documentation is crucial for anyone using your API.
Okay.
Whether it's your own team or other developers, Lovable actually generates API documentation automatically
Really?
based on your definitions. Saves a ton of time and makes sure everything's up to date.
That's a huge help.
Right.
Okay, are there any real-world examples of how companies are using this for API integration?
Yeah, there's a great example with a fintech company.
Mhm.
They were building a personal finance app. They needed to connect with a bunch of banks to get transaction data and stuff.
Right.
Using Lovable, they were able to connect with over 20 different banks in a few weeks.
Wow.
That could have taken months the old way.
That's incredible. All right, we've been talking about a lot of back-end stuff, but what about the front end? The part that users actually see and interact with?
Right.
How does Lovable handle that?
Building a user-friendly interface is so important for any app.
Oh, yeah.
And Lovable's UI builder makes it easy to create interfaces that are beautiful, responsive, and intuitive.
Okay, let's get into that. What's so special about Lovable's UI builder?
Well, one of the coolest things is that it uses AI-driven design principles.
Okay.
Lovable's AI can analyze your content, figure out what your app is about, and suggest layouts, colors, fonts,
Really?
all optimized for a great user experience.
So it's like having a design consultant built right in.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's amazing, especially for those of us who aren't designers. What about responsive design? People are using apps on all sorts of devices these days.
Oh yeah, responsive design is essential. Lovable has tools for that built right in. You can create interfaces that adapt to any screen size.
So Lovable's making sure my app looks good on phones, tablets, desktops, everything.
Yeah, it takes care of all that.
That's a huge relief.
Yeah.
Okay, what other UI features does Lovable offer?
Well, it makes it easy to create touch-friendly interfaces
Okay.
for mobile devices. That means things like making sure buttons are big enough,
Right.
providing feedback when you tap something, and supporting those gestures we all use on touchscreens.
Makes sense. Mobile first is the way to go these days. Anything else?
Lovable also uses a concept called progressive enhancement.
Okay.
Basically, you start with a basic version that works everywhere,
Right.
then add extra features for more powerful devices as needed. That makes sure your app works for everyone, no matter what device they're using.
Accessibility is so important. We talked about performance for the back end, but what about the front end? How does Lovable make sure my app feels fast and smooth?
So Lovable has several tools for that.
Okay, good.
One technique is lazy loading. Basically, it delays loading things like images and videos until you need them.
Okay.
That makes your app feel much faster because it doesn't have to load everything at once.
Smart. Why load everything if the user might not even need it? What else?
Image optimization is another one. Images can really slow things down.
Yeah.
Lovable optimizes them automatically, making them smaller without losing quality.
That's something I always struggle with.
Yeah, it's a big help. Lovable also encourages using a component-based architecture.
Okay.
That means breaking your UI into smaller, reusable pieces.
Right.
This not only keeps your code organized, but it also improves performance because the browser only has to load the components that are needed.
So it's more modular and efficient?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any examples of companies using Lovable's UI builder to create really amazing user experiences?
Yeah, there's a great example with a travel booking company.
Okay.
They wanted to make booking flights and hotels really easy and visually appealing.
Makes sense.
Using Lovable, they were able to quickly try out different designs and get feedback. The result was a beautiful, intuitive app that people loved.
That's awesome. We talked about security for the back end. What about the front end? The part that users actually interact with.
Great point. Front-end security is just as important. Lovable has features built in to help with that too.
Okay, what kind of threats are we talking about here?
Well, one is cross-site scripting, or XSS.
Okay.
That's where attackers try to inject bad code into your site to steal data or take over accounts.
Uh-huh.
Lovable sanitizes user inputs automatically, which basically means cleaning up any data that users submit.
So it's making sure that data is safe and doesn't contain any harmful code.
Exactly.
Okay, good. What else?
Another thing is cross-site request forgery, or CSRF.
Uh,
That's when attackers try to trick users into doing things they don't want to do,
oh, wow.
like making a purchase or changing their settings.
Yeah.
Lovable has built-in protection against that too.
So it's adding extra security measures that I wouldn't even think about.
Right. Lovable can also help you implement content security policies,
Okay.
or CSP. This lets you control what resources your website can load,
Uh-huh.
so attackers can inject bad content.
It sounds like Lovable has thought of everything when it comes to security, front end and back end. But we've covered a lot of technical stuff. What about the human side of building SaaS apps? The skills and mindset you need to be successful.
Right. Building a successful SaaS app is about more than just technical skills. It's also about strategy and understanding your users.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, you need to think strategically about your product.
Right?
Understand the market, your ideal customer, your value proposition.
Got it.
What makes your app special? Why should people use it? You also need to have empathy for your users.
Yeah.
Understand their needs, their pain points. That comes from user research and feedback.
So it's all about building something that people actually want and need, not just something you think is cool.
Exactly. And you need to be able to collaborate with others.
Okay.
Building a SaaS app is rarely a solo effort. You'll be working with designers, marketers, other developers. Communication and teamwork are key.
It takes a village. But what about mindset? What kind of attitude do you need?
A growth mindset is crucial. That's the belief that you can learn and improve through hard work and effort. The SaaS world changes fast, so you need to be adaptable and embrace challenges.
Okay, so it's about constantly learning and improving. What else?
A customer-centric mindset is also important. That means always putting your users first,
Okay.
listening to their feedback, and making your app the best it can be for them.
Right, that makes sense. But building a SaaS app can be tough. Any advice on staying motivated and overcoming challenges?
Remember why you started. What problem are you solving? What impact do you want to make? That can be really motivating. Also, break down big goals into smaller steps.
Okay.
Celebrate those small wins along the way. And surround yourself with a supportive community. Other developers, entrepreneurs.
People who get it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
They can offer encouragement and advice.
That's great advice. All right, we're almost at the end of part 2 here. I want to talk about the big picture for a minute. How is Lovable changing software development? What does the future hold?
Lovable is a great example of how AI is democratizing software development.
Okay.
It's making it accessible to more people. In the past, you needed a lot of technical expertise.
Right.
But now, with Lovable, anyone can build sophisticated apps.
That's pretty exciting.
It is.
Hmm.
But we also need to be mindful of the potential downsides.
Like what?
Well, there's the concern about job displacement. As AI takes over tasks that humans used to do, we need to figure out how to prepare people for this shift.
That's a good point. We need to make sure everyone benefits from these advances. What else should we be thinking about?
Using AI responsibly and ethically.
Yeah.
We need to make sure it aligns with our values and benefits society as a whole. It's an ongoing conversation.
Absolutely. Technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. So Lovable is a powerful tool for innovation, but we need to use it wisely.
Yeah, it's up to us to make sure we use it for good.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for part 2 of our Lovable Deep Dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from database design and API integration to front-end development, security, and even the human side of software development. But we're not done yet. Join us for part 3, where we'll dive into some advanced Lovable techniques and see how companies are using this platform to build real-world apps that are changing the world. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We spent the last 2 parts exploring what Lovable is and how it can help you build these incredible SaaS apps.
Yeah.
But now, in this final part, we're going to shift gears and talk about taking your Lovable skills to the next level.
Right.
Going beyond the basics.
Yeah, unlocking the full potential.
Exactly. We'll dive into some advanced techniques and even look at how companies are already using Lovable to build some pretty amazing products.
It's exciting stuff.
It really is. So where should we start? What advanced techniques are we going to explore?
Let's start with performance optimization.
Okay.
That's key for any SaaS that wants to grow and scale.
Absolutely. Users these days, they expect things to be fast.
Oh, yeah,
If your app is slow or clunky, they're going to go find something else.
for sure.
So how does Lovable help you build apps that are super speedy and responsive?
Lovable tackles performance optimization from multiple angles, both on the front end and the back end.
Okay, so remind me what those are again.
Right, so the front end is what the user sees and interacts with.
Okay.
And we already talked about some front-end techniques like lazy loading,
Yeah.
image optimization, and that component-based architecture.
Yeah.
Those help reduce the time it takes for the page to load and make the app feel snappier.
That's important for sure. But what about the back end?
Right, the back end is all the behind-the-scenes stuff, like the servers and databases.
Okay.
One powerful technique for back-end optimization is caching.
Okay, what is that?
Think of it like creating shortcuts for data that gets accessed a lot.
Okay.
Instead of going back to the database every time, you store that data in a temporary spot, like the user's browser or a cache server, so it can be retrieved much faster.
So it's about being smart with how you store and access data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Lovable has built-in support for different caching methods.
Cool. Are there any other back-end tricks that Lovable uses to make things faster?
Yeah, another one is database indexing.
Okay, tell me about that.
Imagine you have a huge library with millions of books.
Yeah.
Trying to find a specific book without an index would take forever. Indexes are like the card catalog in a library. They help the database find information quickly without having to search through everything.
I get it. So Lovable helps you create those indexes.
Exactly. The AI helps you create and manage them effectively.
Yeah, that sounds super helpful. Are there any companies out there that have seen real results using these techniques?
Oh, yeah, tons. There was this e-commerce platform that was having trouble with slow page load times, especially during the holidays.
Makes sense. That's when everyone's shopping online.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But using Lovable's caching and indexing recommendations, they were able to make their pages load 75% faster.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, it made their customers much happier and even boosted sales.
That's a perfect example of how performance can directly impact a business. Okay, so we've talked about performance, which is key. But security has got to be just as important, especially when you're dealing with all this user data.
Absolutely. Security's paramount, and Lovable takes a layered approach, incorporating all the best practices to keep your app and your users' data protected.
Okay, let's talk about those layers. What does Lovable do to help me build a secure app?
Well, authentication and authorization are crucial. Lovable makes it easy to set up things like multi-factor authentication, so users need more than just a password to get in. And it also has tools for controlling exactly who has access to what within your app.
So it's like a bouncer at a club.
Right. Verifying who's allowed in and what they can do once they're inside.
Love it. What else?
Data encryption is another key area, both in transit and at rest. So even if someone were to get access to your data, it would be unreadable without the key.
That's really important these days with all the data breaches happening.
It is. And Lovable also helps you secure your API endpoints, those entry points to your backend functionality.
Right, we talked about those earlier.
Right, so it offers features like API key management and rate limiting, which control access to your APIs and prevent abuse.
Makes sense. So it's like having a security guard posted at every entrance.
Exactly. And another crucial aspect is input validation.
Okay, what is that?
It's all about carefully checking any data that users submit to make sure it's in the right format and doesn't contain any malicious code.
Right, like trying to sneak something nasty in there.
Right, Lovable has tools to sanitize those user inputs, making it much harder for attackers to exploit any vulnerabilities.
That's definitely something I wouldn't have thought about, so it's great that Lovable takes care of that. Are there any, like, official security standards that Lovable adheres to?
Lovable follows industry best practices and security standards, like the OWASP guidelines, which are developed by the Open Web Application Security Project.
Okay, so they're following the rules and staying up to date on the latest security practices.
Exactly.
That's good to hear. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about one of the most exciting aspects of Lovable, its ability to create custom components and templates.
Yeah, that's where you can really unleash your creativity.
It's like having a superpower. You can build these truly unique and tailor-made apps.
Right. Lovable's component system is a game changer. You can create these reusable building blocks for your app's interface.
I love that. It's like building something awesome out of Legos.
Exactly. So let's say you want to create a custom calendar widget that you can use throughout your app.
Okay.
You start by defining how it works, what data it needs, what users can do with it, and what should happen when they interact with it.
Okay.
Then you design how it looks, using Lovable's UI builder to create the layout, add some styling, and make it interactive.
So you're creating a self-contained piece of functionality and design that you can use anywhere.
Exactly. And once you've built that calendar component, you can reuse it all over your app just by dragging and dropping it in. It's super efficient.
That's amazing. So what about templates? How are those different?
Templates are like blueprints for entire pages or sections of your app. They define the overall layout and structure.
Okay.
And you can fill them in with your own content and those custom components we just talked about.
So it's like a pre-designed layout that I can customize.
Exactly. And Lovable even provides version control for both components and templates. So you can track changes, go back to older versions if you need to, and work together with your team.
Version control is essential. It's a lifesaver. Okay, let's talk about integrating with other services because that opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Absolutely. We talked about API integration earlier, but Lovable goes way beyond that. It has pre-built integrations with tons of popular third-party services that can really enhance your app.
Give me some examples. What kind of services can I connect with?
Oh, there's a huge range. Everything from authentication and payment processing to email marketing, analytics, and customer support.
Wow.
For example, you can integrate with Auth or Okta for secure user logins, or Stripe and PayPal for processing payments right within your app.
Those are definitely must-haves for any SaaS app that wants to make money. What else?
You can integrate with MailChimp or SendGrid for email marketing, or Google Analytics and Mixpanel for tracking how people are using your app.
It sounds like there's an integration for everything. So we've talked a lot about the technical stuff, but what are some of the lessons that companies have learned from actually using Lovable in the real world?
One of the biggest takeaways is to embrace the power of AI, but don't be afraid to take control when you need to.
Okay.
Lovable's AI is a powerful tool, but you're still the one in charge. You're the architect, guiding the process and making the big decisions.
So it's a collaboration, a partnership.
Exactly. Another important lesson is to start small and iterate quickly.
Okay, what does that mean?
Don't try to build the perfect app right away. Just focus on the core features, get it out there, get feedback from users, and keep improving it over time.
That's a great point. And Lovable is perfect for that kind of iterative approach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to experiment and see what you can do with Lovable. The platform is constantly evolving with new features popping up all the time.
So play around, explore, get creative.
Exactly.
That's a great mindset to have. So as we wrap up this 3-part deep dive into Lovable, what's the key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with?
The future of software development is here, and it's more accessible than ever. Lovable is empowering anyone with an idea to build amazing apps. If you're passionate about something, don't wait. Dive in, explore Lovable, and start building.
That's inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of Lovable. We've explored so much, from the basics to some really advanced concepts, and hopefully you're feeling excited and ready to start building your own amazing SaaS apps with Lovable. Until next time, happy building.